Out of the blue reaches of the sea swims the very symbol of horror, a living monster hungry for human flesh.
It bit into my fin and punctured this foot here. My whole thoughts were, this is it. I mean, I am being eaten alive by a shark.
I knew what had me because I could see the teeth out of my left eye. I couldn't believe it, though, at first, until I reached up and touched it. It just felt like a Buick. It was just huge.
Sharks. Our worst nightmares come true, or beasts to be conquered and tamed. While some men work to unravel the mysteries that govern their lives, others strive to outwit them, waging an ongoing battle to find ways to protect ourselves from them. In the age-old struggle between our species, who is winning, mankind or shark? During the program that follows, we will search for the answer, exploring the way sharks work. And on our quest, we will come face to face with the source of our deepest, darkest fears, the creature whose name itself is synonymous with terror. Legendary and lethal, it is the monster men call Great White. More than 360 species of sharks patrol the oceans of the world, all of them carnivores, but not all of them deadly to man. The bizarre hammerhead has, on occasion, attacked divers, and so has the streamlined mako, close kin to the great white shark, and one of the fastest fish in the sea. But the biggest shark of all, the 50-foot whale shark, is a harmless plankton feeder with no interest whatsoever in warm-blooded prey. The lifestyles of sharks are surprisingly varied. The shy white-tip reef shark seeks its prey in the shallows, and when disturbed, shrinks from the company of humans. The bullet-shaped silky, by contrast, is a swift, seagoing swimmer and is wisely avoided by divers. The lithe and lean blue shark, though it may reach 15 feet in length, is normally harmless to humans. And the same is the case with the angel shark, a squat, ray-like shark that searches the bottom for shellfish and mollusks. Equally out of character, in terms of the popular image of sharks, is the little-known horn shark, another shy and reclusive bottom dweller, with teeth designed to crush the shells of crabs and sea urchins. Hardly a foe of man, the horn shark sulks in the seagrass and coral, where it guards its strange corkscrew-shaped eggs. Safe in its armored shell, an infant horn shark waits to enter the world, a world that has always viewed sharks of all sorts with fear and superstition. Early representations of sharks relied more on memory than observation, but the message was clear all the same. Sharks are man-eating monsters, and where their kind is concerned, it is a matter of kill or be killed. Subjects of art through the ages, giant sharks have been cast as the scourge of mankind, agents of horror and human tragedy. Over the years, one shark in particular has cornered most of the press. Carcharodon carcharias, the great white shark. The villain of a million tales of high adventure, and the star performer of an endless succession of spine-tingling stories made to order for the movies. Through high-powered films and hair-raising real-life accounts, the word went out. Let's get them before they get us. But game fishermen worldwide did not need to wait for the news. For years, fishing for sharks has been considered great sport, with big money to be earned by the winners.
Well, they'll be right there.
A shark fishing tournament is held several times each year at Oxnard, California, and at present there is no limit on the number of sharks that can be taken. Sharks such as this mako can make good eating, but these sharks are not taken strictly for food. They are primarily trophies, proof of man's mastery over a formidable adversary, the most dreaded fish in the sea. Humbled in death, the mako is made to display its jaws, a tradition for the group picture. It's hardly a world record setter, just a juvenile, really. But big sharks are growing harder to find every year, and a sportsman must be content with even a bantamweight killer. For the crowd, size doesn't much matter. For any shark is a reason to gawk and to wonder, could I be the victim instead of him? At a famous institution in Monterey, California, the crowds line up early, and for all ages, the live sharks on display are a big part of the draw. The popularity of the aquarium is good news to marine biologists, who would rather have people peering at live sharks than dead ones. Gil van Dijkhausen of the aquarium is one of those who opposes fishing for sharks, pointing out that for some species, their very survival may be threatened.
Sharks are exciting to catch for recreational sport fishermen. And a lot of that occurred back in the 70s after the Jaws movies came out. Shark fishing, shark hunting became a very popular thing to do, both for sport fishermen and the general public, and they went out and experienced that. And what we have seen is a massive decline in the shark stocks around the world. Some of the sharks we're talking about here, female sharks don't mature until they're 35 years of age. And also, they grow very slow. So what we see is a shark which its reproductive characteristics can't handle the kind of fishing pressure that we're putting on them. And so over the past few years, a lot of intensive research has been going on trying to document shark life history characteristics, at what ages, what sizes can you actually fish these animals. And so there's a lot of people that have to draw together in order to put a management plan together. There's a lot of information that needs to be known. Fishermen are actually helping researchers go out and collecting sharks, fishing for them, and tagging them and releasing. And that way they can find out information about where sharks are going, and the standing stock, or the numbers that are actually out there. I guess one of the really commonly asked questions I hear is, why are sharks even important? Why do we even care whether they're overfished or not? They're very similar to the lions and tigers on the Serengeti, in that they help remove some of the sick and maybe dying animals in other animal populations, such as seals and sea lions. So we see that they serve a very important role in their ecosystem. They're an important part of that environment, and they need to be there.
"26 miles west of San Francisco lie the Farallon Islands, a rugged group of atolls, their features carved by harsh Pacific winds, their shores washed by pounding surf. During part of the year, these islands are home to a remarkable congregation of pinnipeds, the scientific name for seals and sea lions. Each year in early spring, these California sea lions haul out by the thousands on the shores of the Farallons to breed and bear their young. Along with the sea lions, the elephant seals on the island are protected by the Marine Mammal Act of 1972, and the population of both has exploded, a fact which no doubt accounts for the popularity of the Farallon waters to the great white shark. For seals and sea lions, particularly the young, are the great white's favorite prey. Farallon Island biologist Peter Pyle, working with the Point Reyes Bird Observatory and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, spends half the year on the islands, waiting for shark attacks.
We have an area around the island we call the danger zone. It extends from about 15 meters from shore out to about 400 meters from shore, and that's the area where we see most of our attacks. It seems that perhaps that area, there's a little more rocks in it than farther out. And the water, on the other hand, the water is deep enough for the sharks to attack their prey from. Our research here on the white shark at Southeast Farallon Island consists primarily of stationing an observer here at the lighthouse during all daylight hours, from which we scan the water around the island at all times for a shark attack. And it can get kind of tedious sometimes because we'll be up here for as long as a week without seeing anything. But then when all of a sudden an attack occurs, we'll spot a big patch of blood in the water, a thrashing animal, a slick. Generally the gulls all take off from the island and circle over the event trying to get something to eat. When we spot that, we run into action, and we take this here. This is a theodolite. It's a geological instrument, and with this thing we can line the shark attack up into the scope here and then take a reading which has the exact vertical and horizontal bearing. And from this we can calculate on a map exactly where the shark attack has occurred. So with that kind of data, if we've got the point where the shark's hitting, then we can look at the bottom under which these attacks are occurring and say, is it more often over rocks and sand, or is it more often, what's the depth of the water? With this sort of data, we hope to be able to maybe caution swimmers and kayakers and surfers about areas and then also about maybe water conditions in which they're at a higher risk of getting hit by a white shark.
Video footage taped on the spot plays an important part in Peter Pyle's work on the Farallons. When a great white homes in on a seal or sea lion, Pyle records the event without attempting to intervene. Then later, by studying videotapes like this one, he is often able to identify the shark that made the attack by noting distinctive scars, color patterns, or notches in its fins. From this information, Pyle and his co-workers have been able to document a disturbing decline in the number of great whites around the island.
In 1982, a fisherman came out and set some hooks out here and caught 5 white sharks, and ended up getting his pictures splashed all over the papers and everything. And we noticed a decline in the populations of white sharks here due to that event. This is something that now we want to discourage, because we think that the white shark is just a natural component to the marine ecosystem around here. It's not this big, terrible beast out here to be feared. Humans tend to get a little overexcited, I think, when they think about white sharks. They think about this dangerous animal, this thing that the media has portrayed as a killer, but really it's not. It's just out here doing its thing. You know, it'll take an animal. It will kill a pinniped and it'll eat it, but that's just part of the natural thing here. By controlling the pinniped population here, I think that it's a valuable sort of component of the ecosystem. I would think that if you got rid of the white sharks, you would end up, the pinniped population would explode, the pinnipeds would take more fish, fishermen would lose more of their industry. There'd be a whole set of repercussions that are just very hard to predict, and I think some of them might throw things out of balance and end up not being good for anybody, including ourselves.
Across the channel, in San Francisco, scientists at the prestigious Steinhardt Aquarium are looking at great whites from the inside out, seeking answers to the mysteries of how they live, so we can protect them and protect ourselves from them. Shark researcher Ken Goldman explains.
This is the same type of transmitter that I fed to a white shark out at the Farallon Islands. This transmitter sends a signal, which I pick up with an underwater microphone. That signal can be broken down into temperature and swimming depth of the animal. The transmitter signal was recorded onto a computer, and the data shows that this animal maintained an average stomach temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, which is 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average water temperature was about 14 degrees Celsius, which is 57 degrees Fahrenheit. This is an amazing thing, the fact that this animal can maintain its body temperature about 20 to 22 degrees Fahrenheit above the surrounding water. This is the data set from the day the transmitter was ingested, and you can see that the body temperature was maintained in a very narrow range throughout the day. An interesting thing about this data set is that the bait was cold prior to ingestion because we kept it refrigerated. So what you see here is a warming trend, the bait being warmed back up to the average stomach temperature for that day. On many occasions, I witnessed that the shark would stay in the area after feeding was complete and search the water column for extra food items. Here you see the shark swimming back up to the surface not only once, but 2 times, and I believe this is indeed the animal searching for extra food items. Upon descending here, the animal then took off and swam, and we tracked it at an average swimming depth of 22 meters for that day.
Goldman's study has given scientists valuable insight into the great white's behavior, and it may help to protect people from becoming victims of shark attacks. People like Californian Eloise Tavares.
On November 3rd, 1990, I was going to go scuba diving with a college class, and it's about 150 yards out of the beach. I felt something hit me, and I thought it was my dive buddy. It was actually the shark biting me for the first time. It bit into my fin and punctured this foot here, and then I continued to swim, and it came and it got me on my leg when I was stuck, and came up out of the water with my leg in its mouth, and I'm reaching over to get my leg out, and you can see the 2 rows of teeth here. My leg was twisted in its mouth. There's the first row and the second row, and then it got me on the back side, and then I pulled my hands back, yelled shark to my dive buddy, and my dive buddy froze. I said, Jesus, help, and then I started punching the shark, and it eventually let go, swam around me a couple times, and swam out past my dive buddy. What happened was a bunch of paramedics came out, and they picked me up right out of the water. I never had to go through the surf. They put me on the beach, and then they started asking me questions, gave me some oxygen, and one of the people said, well, we can't cut your wetsuit because it's holding everything together, and that's when I realized that the damage was more than what I had thought had happened. My whole thoughts were, this is it. I mean, I am being eaten alive by a shark. That's what was going on through my head. And then when I said, Jesus, help, I figured that I would just be helped going through the whole process of being eaten alive. But I never thought that I would still be here living and telling people about it.
Rodney Orr is another Californian who will always remember his recent encounter with a great white.
September 8, 1990, I paddled north from the beach at Russian Gulch. I loaded my spear gun and I got off my board on the right side. I'd kicked away from my board about 6 or 8 feet. I was laying on the surface, and wham, it had me. It picked me up with a head, and it buried the bottom teeth into my face here, at the bottom teeth of the shark, and the top teeth were over my head, went into my neck, and it picked me up by the head. The only visual I have of the attack during the time was when the water drained out of the mouth. I could see the water surface, and it was down about 3 feet. And I knew I knew what had me because I could see the teeth out of my left eye. And I couldn't believe it, though, at first until I reached up and touched it. It just felt like a Buick. It was just huge, and it was just I couldn't find an eye or nothing. But I still had a hold of my spear gun. I had it by the center. I didn't have it by the handle. I commenced to beat on him with that, and I beat on him with my left hand. In fact, my glove from my left hand had cuts on the inside. It just shredded it. But he carried me for about 60 or 70 feet and released me. He went down underneath me, and his head was wider than my shoulders. And he continued on, and I didn't even really look at the whole fish. He just went underneath me. And I noticed that I was streaming blood bad out of my face. When I reached up and felt my face, it just felt like hamburger. But he sliced my face bad in here, punctured my eyelid, top and bottom, bit into my cheekbone and through my nose. I just had blood pouring out of my nose.
Rodney Orr was lucky, for he might easily have joined the growing list of fatalities which have made the north central coast of California the shark attack capital of the world.
In the case of Rodney Orr, lightning does strike twice. Rodney was bitten by a white shark in 1961. And again, just here recently, Rodney was attacked a second time by a white shark. The interesting thing about both attacks was that had the shark wanted to consume Rodney Orr, it had every opportunity to do that, and it didn't. Which tells us that possibly white sharks are not really out to consume human beings, that their attacks against man are not necessarily motivated all the time by predation or mistaking us for a prey item. When we discuss white shark attacks on divers, one of the things that is best to do is try to imagine if we were a white shark, what we would see. If we look at a seal swimming through the water, you see an animal that's very fluid and basically whose body is solid from tip of snout to the hind end where the flippers are. And the animal pulls himself gracefully through the water with his front flippers. If we look at a diver moving through the water, we see an animal who basically is blowing bubbles every few seconds, if he's using an air supply, and whose body is split at midsection because the lower part seems to be moving in two pieces up and down. Of course, that's the diver's legs kicking. If you compare a diver moving through the water and you compare a seal moving through the water, you will find that neither represent the other equally well.
Adult white sharks, the size of this 13.5-footer, spend their days swimming along the cool coastal waters looking for their favorite food item, seals and sea lions. Now, were that seal or sea lion able to detect the oncoming white shark, it could easily swim away. They're much smaller, they're much more maneuverable, and I don't think a white shark would have a chance in capturing that sort of an animal. So the white shark attack behavior is one of surprise. They stalk their prey. Not being seen, they rush up, take an enormous, massive bite, attempt to immobilize their prey item, and then spit them out. And I think that's what's caused so much confusion. When I first began this study, I had no understanding why on earth would a shark so big, so strong, attack a seal that's 1/10 its size, bite it, but then spit it out. But if you wait until the animal has died, then you'll see the shark, which has been swimming in that vicinity, return, feed upon it, and consume it. And that makes the difference if we are the attack victim. You see, if it attacks a seal, it attacks, bites, spits, waits, so that it doesn't allow itself to be injured by this struggling, frightened sea animal that has claws and teeth and every intention of survival. So the shark hasn't changed its behavior just because we've entered the water in the last 30, 40, 50 years. What it's done is attacks a human being, surfers, swimmers, snorkeler, bites, attempts one major immobilizing bite, spits us out, waits for us to die. Some cases we do, then they consume us. And in other cases, the heroic buddy of that victim rushes to the aid of that person, swims them into shore. There they get immediate medical attention, and in so many cases they survive the attack.
To test the theory that sharks are most likely to attack divers they mistake for seals and sea lions, Hollywood special effects wizard Eddie Paul has devised a lifelike scuba robot. Outfitted with legs which move like those of a diver, the robot is designed to kick through the water, behavior which Eddie hopes will alert a shark that this is a human, not something a shark normally would include on the menu.
I have a theory that sharks will attack a non-moving person over a moving person in the water if they have a choice. And if somebody stops to shoot a photograph or spear a fish, that's the time you're most likely to get attacked by a shark. And if you keep swimming at a normal pace, they're not as likely to attack you. And to help prove it, I built this robot that does nothing but swim. We have another one that just stays limp. We'll put them in the water at the same time and see what happens. So if this works right, when you turn on this valve, the air from this tank should power the robot and make it swim like a normal diver. So we'll see. It looks like it swims, and it wasn't attacked by a shark.
The acid test for Eddie Paul is to determine how well his robots fare in the open ocean, where their performance will be judged by their toughest critics, the sharks.
Raise her up, guide Daddy up around, drop her down.
A strong cage is loaded aboard to provide protection for the divers during the experiment. The expedition is headed for the Channel Islands off the coast of Southern California, one of the known haunts of the great white shark. And as divers have learned at their peril, when diving with whites, it pays to be cautious.
Okay, let her down. We're right where we want to be. Right where we want to be. You're fine.
The dive team is in good hands. Skipper John Gelsinger has been diving with sharks for more than 30 years, while Eddie himself is a veteran of many expeditions in search of great whites. But one thing is certain. None of the crew has set off before with such an unusual cargo. For 20 years, John Gelsinger has skippered the Hey Jude while supporting himself by diving for sea urchins, a high-risk profession, for urchin divers must always keep a wary eye out for sharks. Noted underwater photographer Marty Snyderman, an expert on sharks in California waters, is an important part of the hand-picked crew. It is a 4-hour run to Santa Barbara Island, and by the time the boat arrives on site, the sun has already begun to warm the day. Gelsinger knows the spot well. The offshore waters are deep and cool, ideal for great whites. The cage, which the divers will trust with their lives, is swung from the deck and lowered into position. While most divers go out of their way to avoid sharks, the objective here is to attract them with blood purchased from a slaughterhouse. And if the blood doesn't do the trick, there's a can full of mackerel to lay down a scent trail that leads to the boat. Eddie Paul and Noreen McKenney make final adjustments to the robots, while crew member Laura Fox stirs up an unholy stew, a mixture which, in theory at least, no great white should be able to resist. Each robot, the one that swims and the one that merely floats, is given a game bag full of fish, just like a real scuba diver might have. All Eddie needs now are some sharks. A chum line drifts away from the boat, a message that a passing great white ought to read loud and clear. The table is set, dinner is served, and the divers begin their vigil. There are days when the wait can take hours, but today is an exception. It's a blue shark, hardly a man-eater, but a shark all the same. And where there is one, there are most likely more. A blue investigates the bait, while a second circles the cage, confused perhaps by this intrusion in its domain. The posture of this one reveals that he's curious, but his curiosity could bring in others, not just other blues, but just maybe great whites.
I think it's a great sign that we've got sharks up here, but the key factor is to get this chum line spread. It's working out in the deep ocean. We've got a good current, and maybe if we get a white shark real close, it'll sense these animals up here being competitive. But I think the key is to get a good chum line going.
So if there's one or two animals eating, then they get a chance to get at the food?
Well, I think what happens if we have one or two sharks, they tend to stay away from the cage. If we start to get more and more, they need to get competitive. They kind of leapfrog over one another, work up to the cage, and then the cage becomes an effective platform for us. But if we've just got one shark, the animal's going to stay down current, where it can just stay and pick up food. It's kind of a free meal, and they don't have to work for it.
Snyderman's objective, a mini feeding frenzy of blues, is about to be realized. Graceful yet powerful, a big blue is a formidable animal. An adult reaching 15 feet could be treacherous if provoked. Here, a shank from a slaughterhouse serves as bait, but it's easy to picture the effect of the shark's jaws on human flesh. Powerful and impressive though the blue shark may be, its performance is only a prelude to what is to come.
I think if we're going to get a white, the key is not so much that we've got blue sharks. That's just a good sign that the chum is working.
Marty Snyderman knows you can wait for weeks for a great white shark, and then suddenly, almost miraculously, it appears. More than 15 feet in length and weighing over a ton, the great white is, without a doubt, one of the most awesome and terrifying sights a diver could ever hope to see.
I'll never forget the first time being in a cage with a great white shark, and the animal worked out in the distance for 2 or 3 passes, and all of a sudden it just swam right at the cage. And you just see this mouthful of teeth, and I remember looking up above me and seeing teeth at the top of the cage, and then looking down, and I couldn't even see the bottom of the shark. I guess this animal is 15 or 16 feet long, and it was in a vertical position, and it was just huge. 2,500 pounds, 16 feet, something like that. It was an enormous animal.
The biggest predatory fish in the sea, the great white is frustratingly difficult to study, and as a result it remains a creature of myth and mystery, even to many shark scientists. Normally the great whites are solitary, cruising the seas alone in search of prey. But the presence of food can bring the great sharks from miles away, following their noses to the meal. Despite its reputation for voracity, the big shark is wary, investigating the bait. Then, pouring on the power for which it is famous, it closes for the kill. It is this image which haunts the memory of the survivors of great white attacks, the image of a shadowy monster that looms without warning out of the deep. A fish the size of a family car, armed with teeth as sharp as razors. John Gelsinger likes to recall one of his close encounters with a great white.
We were diving Santa Barbara Island one day, beautiful island, exciting water, and a big white shark swam through the kelp. He wasn't interested in us. He just swam through. Didn't even stop to notice us. But, it was an incredible day. I remember just feeling so insignificant and so small. And fortunately, it was towards the end of the day, so we decided maybe we'd been in the water long enough, and we pulled our anchor and went home.
With sharks actively feeding, the time is right to test their response to the robot divers. The results of the test could mean the difference between life and death for anyone unlucky enough to find themselves in the water with a white. The robot in the gray wetsuit is rigged to swim, while the robot in the black wetsuit is designed to merely float. The unenviable task falls to Eddie Paul and an assistant to leave the safety of the cage and activate the robots. The robots perform as instructed. One of them kicks, the other hangs motionless in the water. It is time for the test to begin. In case the sharks are unimpressed by the robots, a basket of chum is dumped overboard to lure them to the boat. The first taker is a blue, snaking in from the deep in its classic attack stance, its back arched, its dorsal fins down. Its curiosity aroused, the shark investigates the setup, cautiously checking out the robots. As it prepares to attack the game bag, it first shields its eye with a special membrane to guard it from bone and bits of debris. The game bag is savaged, but the robot remains unscathed. The shark makes a second pass, while a gaggle of gulls and shearwaters waits for a meal. Again, it is the non-swimming robot which draws the shark's attention, while the kicking diver is ignored. The fins go down. A sea lion makes for cover. Two more sharks join the fray, circling the motionless robot. Surrounded by sharks, with loose bait in the water, these are conditions no diver would welcome. And to no one's surprise, there's the attack.
Look at this. This is really interesting. This non-moving diver got hit so hard in the arm they practically tore it off. And they shredded this game bag.
I saw them doing that part of it. It was interesting. At the same time, the diver that was moving never got attacked at all until we turned the air off, at which time they went for his left arm, got him in the arm, and then went for his game bag, tore that to shreds. But it was interesting that it only happened when we turned the air off.
Could it be that a kicking, moving diver is far less attractive to sharks than one that floats motionless?
It definitely warrants more testing. It's not conclusive. I did a small test out there when we had a couple sharks there where I stopped moving, and they came in. As soon as I kicked my feet, they moved away, so it didn't take a lot of motion to scare them off. So I think it definitely does warrant more research with different types of sharks.
I've always thought the shark a really awesome animal. I mean, they've been around since before dinosaurs, and I think we've seen a real decline in the numbers of them out here. But there's some good things happening. Recently, the longliners have stopped fishing for them. And that was pretty hard on the resource. And I think the sport industry has also kind of backed off a little bit. And maybe given a little time, we'll see the numbers increase. It'll be beneficial for the sharks.
Mysterious, majestic, tragically misunderstood, the great sharks have dwelled in the seas for long ages. But it is only now, in the 11th hour, that we have begun to learn how sharks and us can peacefully live together. Australia, sparkling air and gleaming cities, a nation obsessed with sport and blessed with sunshine, a nation in love with the sea. Join us in the next hour as we continue our journey on the trail of the great white shark. The trail of the great white shark leads inevitably to the heartland of its range, the island continent of Australia. Beyond the barren, burning center of the continent sprawl thousands of miles of wild and rugged shoreline, a lure for all who crave nature in the raw, uncrowded and unspoiled. And for a growing number of adventure-minded visitors every year, it is the gateway to new worlds that wait to be explored. To many of us, wild Australia means kangaroos and wallabies, crocodiles and ibises, and a host of other odd and beguiling creatures. But those who are content with the continent's commonplace attractions are missing what may be the ultimate adventure which Australia has to offer, the quest for the great white shark. The bane of Australian surfers and swimmers, the great white beckons to a bold group of explorers, those seeking answers to the riddles which surround its life. For the underwater explorer, Australia offers enticements to rival the wonders to be found on the shore, including strange creatures found nowhere else on the earth. But as an attraction, none compare to the big one itself, the great white shark. Reaching 25 feet in length and weighing up to 3 tons, the great white is clearly one of the most awesome and terrifying creatures to be found on land or sea. The search for the great white shark leads inevitably to Port Lincoln in South Australia, at the mouth of Spencer Gulf. To those who fish for sharks, and to those who come to study them, this town at the southern edge of the continent is known as Home Port. Most of the team is from California, but with them are several top Australian divers, veterans of many exciting great white expeditions.
Can we take a little more slack in this line, please?
For some, this promises to be the first encounter with the fish that has been called the ultimate killing machine. Bait in gargantuan quantities is loaded aboard, along with lots of crushed ice to keep it cold en route. In a vat of industrial size, a soup is stirred up, made of minced tuna and blood, a brew which shark expert Rodney Fox finds that great whites can hardly resist.
I like to do these trips for more serious-minded people, like photographers and filmmakers. At least when you put the sharks through their actions and make sometimes fools out of them, we can learn more, and at least thousands and thousands, maybe millions of people can see them.
Rodney Fox probably knows more about great whites than anyone else in Australia, and each year for many years he has led shark expeditions to the Neptune Islands south of Port Lincoln. The sleek sailing ship Lefayli has been rigged just for this task, and its antique appointments are an uncommon plus. Repairs to equipment consume the crew, while their diving gear waits, ready for action on the first sight of the big one. A fur seal pup, only a few days old, ignores the intrusion. The presence of young seals is a good sign. The big sharks may be hunting nearby. The camera is an invaluable tool in the study of whites. Underwater photographer Noreen McKenney is ready to bring back a record of the great sharks, if they're there. There are years when, despite a heroic search, no great whites can be found in these waters. And there is no guarantee that this expedition will succeed where so many others have failed. But with an optimism born of long years of experience, Rodney Fox orders the 3 big shark cages lashed on board, made ready for action, just in case. The cages were designed here in Australia, a place where diving with sharks was developed into an art. It may seem hard to believe, but there's a waiting list to be among the first divers down in the cage.
Now I'm nearly finished now.
With Rodney on this cruise is Kevin Deacon, an Australian who, like Rodney himself, was attacked by a shark and lived to tell about it again and again.
I looked down, and this big shark had my leg right across its mouth.
All right.
Like a dog with a bone. And so I had the camera in my left hand, so I started smashing it over the nose, and then smashed it in the eye with my right fist. And my hand flew open and split my finger open on its teeth. I never felt any pain in my finger or my leg. And the shark was so sort of upset by this, it just let go, didn't tear off, and just moved right off past my body. It's from this big silver body go past. Took 101 stitches to close up the leg.
Wow, I know the feeling. Yeah, during my shark attack, I was very, very lucky. You know, that shark that grabbed me around the chest, normally they would grab it and shake and take that whole piece out. And
Rodney Fox was lucky, and during his days as a professional abalone diver, he was often in danger of becoming shark bait. Now, however, he prefers to bait the sharks instead.
Hang it over the side so the shark's head will be very close to the surface. The shark's head will come out of the water and we can see him, his jaws closing like this. The blood is to attract him along to the side there, and we hope to pull his head right out. It's the best opportunity we've got for topside photography.
While Rodney would rather not bait the sharks, there is no better way to observe them at close range and to gain a sense of their incomparable power. After a few hours of patient vigil, the effort pays off. with a reward worth waiting for. The recent increase in white shark attacks on humans puzzles Rodney Fox.
In the last couple of years, we've lost 2 divers to white sharks. The bodies have totally disappeared, and it seems as if the great whites ate them all up totally. I think it's by mistake. It could be a really hungry or sick shark, because if the sharks wanted to eat humans, there's one that they could have a smorgasbord off our beaches every weekend. There's literally hundreds of people out there that could be attacked. I think they usually go for their own, the seals, the dolphins, and the fishes, and generally leave humans alone.
While experts contend that the average person is far more likely to be struck down by lightning than to be dined on by a great white shark, the fact remains that few prospects in life are more chilling than death in these scalpel-sharp jaws. The tattered remains of the bait bag testify to a creature of uncommon power, a creature that divers themselves hope to meet very soon, face to face. The great white's attack on the bag of bait has sent a ripple of excitement through the crew of the Phaley. The first of the big aluminum cages is swung from the deck and gingerly lowered into the Gulf. While the cages are made to survive an attack by the biggest shark known to man, everyone here has seen the movies, and it's hard to avoid the thought, what if there is a monster shark out there? And what if it decides to attack? For those inclined to worry, the statistics afford little comfort. For if there is a big shark out there, almost everyone agrees it's likely to show up here.
Everyone, ready? Okay, take her up. Coming up.
To sweeten the deal, buckets are filled with blood meal bought from a slaughterhouse. The dried blood will lay down an odor trail, which, in theory at least, will lure a great white to the cage. Then, to make things still more enticing, Rodney adds to the stew generous helpings of whole blood, mixed with ground tuna. The only interested party, however, is an Australian blonde sea lion, part of a herd that breeds on the nearby Neptune Islands. Among the world's most endangered sea lions, the colony here has been reduced to only 700 animals, and those that remain now enjoy the full protection of the Australian government. Favorite prey of the great white shark, the Australian sea lions have declined along with the predator, which once rode herd on their numbers, maintaining a balance which was beneficial to both. Reduced by generations of uncontrolled slaughter, the graceful and gregarious Australian sea lions may now be living their last years of freedom in the green southern sea, where they evolved long ages ago. Living as they do in the home range of one of the Earth's most formidable hunters, the sea lions must stay ever alert for danger, especially when venturing beyond the relative safety of the shallows. Here, near the shore, the young sea lions fish and hone the skills they will need to elude the great predator whose grim shadow looms over their lives. Though the sharks take their share of sea lions, the lively mammals are hardly defenseless. Heavily cushioned with fat and armed with sharp claws, the sea lions boast, in addition, the agility and speed to easily outmaneuver any white shark, provided they see it coming. The flashy acrobatics, the rolls and the somersaults are neither for show nor for sport. Instead, they permit the sea lions to survey their world from every angle and direction, a skill that we humans, weighed down with scuba, can only admire and envy. Riding at anchor just off the shore, the Phelie is in an ideal position to intercept a great white on one of its irregular raids on the sea lion colony. Precautions are required, however, to make sure that the sharks are not lured to the sea lions. Sea lion researcher Peter Marchant lays a trail of green dye in the water to determine the direction of the current. Marchant's concern is that chum spread from the Phelie may be drifting toward the shore and could lead a white shark to the sea lions.
We're here quite legally.
Right now you're here quite legally, but you did have an agreement with Mr. Lewis, the boss of the Fisheries Department, that you would not anchor within a point from that line there to the reef there. Now, you've anchored so that you're what, one boat length outside of that line?
Rodney Fox is careful to observe the rules set by the Fisheries Department, and a watch is kept to make certain that the chum slick stays well offshore.
I believe that the white sharks...
It is Fox's view that his efforts to understand and protect the white shark perfectly complements Marchant's work with the sea lions, and an understanding is quickly reached which satisfies both parties. Marchant's offer to visit the island is graciously accepted, and the Phelie drops anchor near shore, within easy reach of a colony of New Zealand fur seals, which thrive in these cool southern waters. More densely furred than the sea lions, the fur seals are adapted to life in a harsher climate. But here the ranges of the two overlap. It is customary in the southern spring for the male fur seals to contend for control of the females. To the winner of the contest will go all rights to the harem. Bear-like and belligerent, the fur seals betray their ancestry, recalling their four-footed forebears who forsook the land for the sea. Scarred from battles with rival males, the harem master must work without rest to keep the females in line, and any attempt to slip out of his reach is swiftly and sternly rebuffed. Against the big males, the much smaller females have no choice but to comply. Sex is accomplished in the shallows, with the submissive female pinned down and often totally submerged under the great bulk of the male. The proud product of the union is a furry fuzzball, unable to swim and barely able to walk. The seasonal abundance of these helpless pups is a prime reason for the presence offshore of the great white shark. Barely a day old, the young fur seal nurses, blissfully unaware of the peril which waits beyond the beach. In the days to come, there will be much to learn, new skills to practice, and new worlds to explore. By the time the pups are several weeks old, their school has moved to the tide pools, where they undergo basic training for a life that will largely be led in and under the water. It is only after several months that the young seals dare to venture into deeper water, where trouble lurks. Seals and great whites coexist in these waters, as the cheetah and gazelle coexist on the Serengeti. In order to fish, the seals must be ready to accept certain risks, including the risk of being eaten alive. Though speed and agility are on the seal's side, when swimming with whites, a fatal mistake is only a fin's length away. The results of these attacks are grimly evident on the beach. Dragging themselves to the shore, the wounded wait to die. A fortunate few among the victims survived to test their luck again against the great white shark. Life and death form a seamless fabric along the shores of the Neptune Islands, near the mouth of Australia's Spencer Gulf. And it is to understand more of that great web of being that the crew of the Phaley has come here, risking their lives to dive with the great white sharks.
You've got to centralise them in front of the guy that's the hole so he can jump straight in.
The sharks are there. The cage is ready. The divers prepare for the ritual to come with a grim resolve, like fighter pilots preparing for a dangerous mission. It is easy to feel small and vulnerable, alone in a wire cage, knowing that somewhere out there waits a man-eater. To entice the sharks close to the cage, a line of bait fish are tied together with stout nylon twine. Dragged through the water with a balloon as a float, the fish should resemble the fast-moving prey that the great whites normally hunt. The wait this time is brief. Through a cloud of blood, the killer comes. And bathed in blood, the divers watch in spellbound fascination. In a 1936 edition of a respected magazine of natural history, a shark expert wrote, "In the study of animals, or even of fishes, a man usually finds something likable about them. But in the monstrous, cruel, cowardly shark, he can find not one admirable trait. He is simply a tiger." Far from a cowardly, killing machine, the great white is a creature of complex design, endowed with a set of sensory systems which scientists have barely begun to understand. And aware of our own limitations, many of us are now ready to acknowledge that a creature that has survived for 100 million years is worthy of respect and admiration. Dubbed by some a swimming nose because of its keen sense of smell, the shark is equipped with an awesome array of sensory skills, all designed to help it find prey in the vast open reaches of the sea. Monstrous in appetite and mammoth in size, the great white arouses, even in scientists, deep and disturbing fears. For though, in theory at least, the big shark prefers fish to humans, No one, not even a veteran shark scientist, is eager to try out the theory. Tensions are high in the cage. But it is the great white, not the humans, which has the most to fear. For in recent years, the sharks' numbers have plummeted, and encounters such as these are becoming increasingly rare. Slaughtered as a trophy, or merely murdered for pleasure, the great whites have taken a merciless beating. And in contrast to the chorus in defense of the dolphins and whales, few voices to date have been raised in support of their rights to be here. Illogical as it may seem, one of those voices belongs to the Australian fishing industry, which has come to see the shark not as a competitor, but as an essential part of the ecosystem. Unfortunately, not all fishermen agree that sharks deserve protection. This Japanese tuna vessel, prowling the seas off Australia, is using long lines to fish for sharks, not for their meat, but their fins. A delicacy in Asia, shark fin soup sells for $50 a bowl, while the sharks themselves are considered useless. Stripped of their fins, the sharks are thrown back to the sea. Hong Kong alone buys 7 million pounds of shark fins per year, accounting for the deaths of millions of sharks. Australian fisheries scientists are alarmed, fearing that the loss of the sharks may have disastrous effects on the marine ecosystem. In particular, they are appalled by the senseless waste of a resource which, properly managed, could satisfy numerous needs, including the need of millions for food. Australian Fisheries Minister Gordon Hill is one of those who is outraged by the misuse of a valuable natural resource.
I'm disgusted with that. I think that it's absolutely disgraceful that people can operate in that way and not take the whole fish. Okay, they've got a Commonwealth licence to take the fish, but to cut the fins off and throw the fish back, I think is disgraceful.
While ships under foreign flags continue to function unchecked, flaunting the principles of fisheries management, homegrown fishermen like these have begun to view sharks in a whole new light. Drew McDermott works for a commercial fishing company, and sharks are his bread and butter. One big difference between their work, however, and that of the foreign competition is that in this case, the whole shark is used. No part of the shark is wasted. The result is a thriving business, one which not only earns money, but which protects the shark stocks in the wild by making the resource stretch farther. Drew's partner, Bob Bubb, explains.
In a very, very short period of time, I've seen several fish stocks brought down to a point where management is vital. At the same time, learning all of that and seeing these things happen myself, it became quite clear that if the stocks were going to still be here for future generations, that we had to take a variety of different types of action. Now, both Drew and myself have spent the last 2 years looking at added value on the fish that we actually harvest. None of this fish is imported, it's local product. It's the fish that we harvest from the sea, and these are the results of our labour.
With the shark here. What's it, a bronzy?
That's a piece of small bronze whaler.
Which is it's very strong. It's 7 times stronger than cowhide of the same thickness. And as you can see, a little thin strap like that's pretty unbreakable. It's also very flexible. It's colour fast, 80% light fast. It's water resistant, and it's also dry cleanable. It takes a stitch very well. It's suited excellently to clothing and fashion accessories. Very,
that leather squeak, can you pick that squeak up?
For McDermott and Bubb, the objective was to develop a shark industry that could be sustained by harvesting a small number of sharks and using every conceivable part of the animal for profit.
The last thing we want to see is our resources totally destroyed for very, very little value.
It is an approach which works in the best interest of both man and shark, combining sound conservation practice with the tried and true principles of business.
No two pieces are exactly the same. It's amazing. No two pieces have got the same pattern, and even the pattern varies.
Under a grey South Australian sky, a legal secretary from Brisbane descends for her first dive with the great white shark. There is a rush which divers feel when they first enter the world of the shark, a sense of the presence of a force beyond our comprehension. Its jaws set in a childlike grin, it investigates the cage, and a diver's heart pounds harder. 15 feet in length, it dwarfs the humans and their cage. For now it is the divers who are on display. What thrill ride can compare with an arm's-length view of one of the world's mightiest living predators, a creature few may ever see at such close range again? Perhaps attracted in some uncanny way by the weak electric field around the cages, the shark tests the metal with its nose and finds it unacceptable to eat. The shark's attentions worry Rodney Fox, for a hand outside the cage could be lost within a second.
A couple of those sharks down there are biting on the cages, so just tell those guys to watch out for their elbows because you don't see them coming, and be a bit careful.
Sure, no worries, Rodney.
With the sharks excited by the bait and moving closer to the cages, the conditions could not be better for observation, study, and photography. Silently, a big male white glides in from miles away, and every human eye watches it warily. It takes the bait, snapping the tough nylon line as if it were a piece of thread. A school of Tommy roughs is careful to avoid the shark's jaws. Their purpose here is to sweep up the leftovers without becoming a meal. Dark above and pale below, the shark is perfectly camouflaged, an important consideration for a predator that relies upon stealth. With reason to fear no creature in the sea, the great white devotes all of its energy to the search for prey, a skill it has raised to the level of an art. But beyond the four walls of the cage, the ways of the shark are a mystery. Unable to survive in captivity, it betrays few clues to observers about its real life in the wild. And with more of the big sharks falling prey every day to the long-line fishermen, even hair-raising moments like this may soon be no more than a memory.
We don't seem to see many of the large 16, 17 and 18-foot sharks around anymore. It seems like these bigger, older ones have all nearly been caught out. They've been caught in lines and rolled up in nets, caught by fishermen. By killing off the great whites, commercial fishermen could be actually jeopardizing their industry, because great white's favorite food is the dolphin and the seal, and these animals actually eat hundreds of pounds of commercial fish per day. Great whites are culling them down and stopping them from breeding up into huge proportions, which could eat most of the fish around this area.
It is impossible for a diver to enter the world of the great white without gaining a profound sense of empathy with these creatures, whose lives are far from easy, and whose aim, like that of all creation, is merely to survive. Like some lethal dirigible, the shark drifts by, near enough to reach out and touch. Yet we know next to nothing about its life. How deep does it dive? How fast does it swim? What are its mating habits? All remain mysteries. Even today, after years of study, no one knows the answers to even such basic questions as how long a shark lives and how large can it grow. The shroud of mystery only adds to the mystique of the silent assassin. The eerie, unblinking eye, the jaws that rip and tear, all add up to an incomparable image of terror. Yet in a strange and unsettling way, we are drawn to this creature we dread above all others, this mindless monster of our darkest dreams. Is our grim fascination simply a result of the shark's inclination to eat us? Yet fewer than 20 humans in the past half-century have met death in these jaws. It has been little more than a generation since humans in numbers first entered the realm of the shark, and the great white may well be as puzzled by us as we are by him. A monster by any measure, the great white arouses what may be our deepest, most disturbing fear. The fear of being eaten alive. Yet those few who have been privileged to dive with the great white shark will remember it not as a monster and a man-eater, but as a creature of savage grace, with the same right to life on this planet as we claim for ourselves. Divers who have entered the world of the shark speak of the adventure with awe, and to a man and a woman, they describe their encounter with the whites as an experience they will never forget.
Say that again.
Do you think that
Two
was,
of them.
Do you think that was the kind of shark that bit you?
No. In all my years of diving, I've never seen a shark look more dangerous than those ones. Similar, but these guys are different. These ones look real mean, yeah.
Bigger too?
Much bigger. The one that bit me was about 9 foot. Those ones, they were about 14 or 15 feet.
And what about when he came up to the cage with his mouth wide open? Did you enjoy that?
Well, I was hanging out the cage there for a while, taking pictures. As he came right on up, I just shrank back into the cage because I just felt like whatever you left hanging out, they just bite straight off.
Yeah.
There's just no fear in them at all.
I tell you, I've seen some magnificent animals in my life, but the great white is incredible. There was one time there was a lot of blood in the water, and I just turned around, and just right there, right in front of me, one came and hit the cage. Thank God I had a cage. I wouldn't be here to talk about it. Magnificent creature.
It was great to see the white shark going by, to know that I was actually there doing it at the time. Thought about it. It was scary getting down there, but I was pre-programmed myself to do it. So I had to do it, and it was wonderful to see them go by.
Magnificent, malevolent, a mindless monster, or one more misunderstood creature doing its best to survive. The great white remains as it's always been, a being of our own creation, a creature of myth and mystery.